Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
We should be live. We are live now. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to, I guess, is this the 13th or the 14th episode of Hell in a Handbasket? Because last time we ended up with two.
Episode.
I'm saying 12.0.3 because we've had two episode 12s. Maybe what it is.
It's not even funny anymore. Like, we don't try to do this. Like,
Yeah,
we don't try to look like idiots. We just seriously, we do not know what we're doing. I think it's
it just happens by itself. It's magic. It's like, if I didn't know any better, could have sworn I was a goddamn moron. But you know what I'm thinking is, see, what it is maybe with the defunding of USAID, and you hear about this NED now, National Endowment for Democracy, getting in the crosshairs too. What's happened is that our funding, they only funded our podcast through like 12 episodes. And so now we perpetually have to be like episode 12.0.3, episode 12.0.4, up until they renew our funding. That's got, or maybe, or conversely, what we could do is we could go episode 1 through 12, and then go down from 12 back to 1, to episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12, episode 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, and then just keep going back and forth. We could also do that.
Well,
I think those are our best options.
We will endeavor next time to
remember the episode.
Endeavor next time to actually figure it out before we start.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's episode 14. And
I guess let's go with 14.
Think, there's only really one topic to talk about this week. I would think we had planned to talk about something else, but then Munich Security Conference happened, and I don't know, kind of ruined our plans there because the
you can't not talk about it,
right? So
yeah, dude, this is massive.
Into it.
Yeah, this is massive. This is huge. This is so like the last time I remember, like the most impactful speech that people bring up about the Munich Security Conference was like Putin's speech, where he like lambasted Europe. And now this has got to be the biggest. So the biggest deal, the biggest bombshell, right? In this security conference, I think it's not Hegseth. I think it was JD Vance going out there and basically talking mad shit on the European elites. What did he do? He said that it's not Russia or China that's the greatest threat to European democracy. It's basically you guys, right? It's the European elites. He was saying that
he referred to it as the enemy from within. He said the real enemy is the enemy from within. And you saw all the
that's
Europeans
you guys. That's you. That's you. Like, that's who they are. Like, who is the idiots that are destroying their I mean, basically he's saying what everybody kind of knows and everybody kind of feels, right? Because this was even discussed on the DPA open mic, right? Where they're like, hey, listen, China is nowadays looking a little bit more like liberal and free towards individual rights and freedom of speech than the Europeans are, because at least they don't arrest you for saying complicated things until you become like a real problem, Meanwhile, what are they doing? Like, people are getting arrested for retweeting things that Vance or Hegseth said in Germany. And today they're holding, honestly, okay, like today they're holding the aftermath of the peace conference, like starts, and tomorrow, Lavrov meeting with Rubio in Riyadh, right? Today, Zelensky scrambling to meet with Erdogan in Turkey. Today, also, the Paris freaking peace talks, right? Which I think somebody from Hungary, I think it was the foreign minister or something, called it a meeting of warmongers, right? People are scrambling in the aftermath, in the wake of this thing that was like Munich Security Conference. And these Europeans who, remember, they were trying to Trump-proof Ukraine. They were talking about this last year, right? I guess they didn't Trump-proof Ukraine because now they're scrambling. They are scrambling and they are in panic mode. And I think so is Zelensky. I think the Trump administration is moving so fast that people are shocked. They don't know what to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, well, you look at it, right? And the whole European security architecture for the last 70 years has been this NATO architecture. And I don't know about you, but when I saw Vance talk, he basically said NATO's done. And, you guys need to, start defending yourselves.
That's what they're saying. That's what the Europeans are saying. They're saying that Vance basically said NATO's done. And I mean, I guess we know that Trump has not been very, let's say, NATO friendly, maybe president, right? He's said a lot of stuff about it over the years and stuff. But like, hold up my mouse, Dad. I'm trying to find the charging cable. One sec.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you do that. I'll keep rambling. But what I took away from Vance's speech was basically, we're not going to be in Europe for much longer. The reality of needing Europe is now changed, or needing NATO has changed, and the realities of American, priority has changed. And
what did he say? You have to be your own first responders.
Yeah. He basically said we're pulling out of Europe. NATO is kaput, and peace be with you. That's what I basically took from the guy, and I think most European leadership took it that way, and that's why you saw him scrambling over the weekend and again today to try to figure out, number one, what does this mean, and more importantly, what does it mean for them, and then what are the next steps. And I haven't had a whole lot of time to devote to like news on it today, but from what I could tell, nothing was accomplished today, and it didn't look like there was any sort of unified front. So I think we'll see a meeting like this, maybe another one, and that'll be it. I think they're going to shift to how do we deal with Ukraine post-war, and what does that
save face and wind it down too.
Or just like, if I'm in Germany right now, right, or France, my biggest concern is not the war in Ukraine. My biggest concern is the pending refugee crisis coming from Ukraine. So
that's right.
I think that they're going to shift pretty quickly to how do, like you said, how do we get out of this, and more importantly, how does this affect Europe? And then how do we mitigate that, right? That's going to be their priority, not the war. I think they're still reeling, but yeah, that's going to be a big refugee crisis. You're going to have 20 million people, all angry, by the way, coming to Europe because there's nothing left in Ukraine. It's a rump state now.
Well, yeah, it's already getting there. And look, little dictator Zelensky, and like, I mean, I up until now, I was kind of reluctant to call him a murderous dictator, right? I was like, okay, he's a dictator because his mandate has run out, right? But I don't know, is he like the murderous kind of dictator? There's a difference between I'm going to kill my political opponents, like a psychopath, or I'm just going to send, that layer of abstraction where I'm just going to let the machine keep grinding on and grinding Ukrainian boys into powder. At the front line, like that's a little bit different, because if Zelensky wasn't there, the powers that be would find a way to keep that going or perpetuating that. But now I think that he's crossing the line into being murderous dictator Zelensky, because what is he doing? He's trying to auction off the future of Ukraine in order to remain relevant for just some time, right? So what did they try to do? They tried to have this mineral deal, right? With the Americans, and they kind of thought it was a done deal in a way. And what did the Ukrainians do? They said, no, we are not signing this rare earth deal with the Americans because it's too one-sided, and there were no security guarantees for Ukraine. So what are they doing? They're saying they're kind of playing the multipolarity game in a way, right? Ironically, they're playing the Europeans and the UK up off against the Americans and going like, well, wouldn't you like preferential access to our rare earth minerals? I'm pawning it off anyway, and I have to keep the war going. And the Ukrainians want to, the Zelensky, he wants to kind of remain relevant and alive. That's kind of how I see it. But the Europeans are looking at it as like, well, sorry, go ahead.
well, no, I think you're probably. I think if I was in the Ukrainian leadership right now, including Zelensky and all these, Budanov and the rest of them, the only thing I'd be thinking about is how the hell do I get out of here alive with my family? Seriously. So I would imagine that Zelensky is thinking that, like, he's not thinking about maintaining power or anything like that. He right now, like today and the last few days, he's reeling like the rest of Europe.
Dude, it looks
But
like
that's gonna
he's
change real quick.
experiencing some kind of narcissistic mortification where
Yeah. And that's going to change. He's going to realize, okay, the taps are off. I've got no military, and more importantly, I've got no money. Right? Forget about the military. What's going to bring down Ukraine is going to be the collapse of the bureaucracy. None of those people are getting paid. Right? That's what's going to collapse the country, not the military. So yeah, Zelensky's going to shift very quickly, I think, to how the hell do I get out of here? And that's good. And they all will, right?
See, I'm thinking like here's what I think. I think the UK, especially the UK, because the UK is doubling down on this, right? What the UK and France and I think Germany and Poland said they definitely wouldn't send troops on the ground. And the UK and France were like, we definitely would send troops on the ground. And the Americans were like,
he walked that back today.
Keir Starmer, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, he walked that
somebody told him, hey, shut up.
We had no troops.
Yeah. Did you not realize that we've sent all of our artillery? I guess I was listening to Ian Proud. It's like a ex-British diplomat or something, and he was saying that no, it's even worse in the UK than it is in the US. The stocks for artillery, because we already know famously in the US, they're like training artillery without artillery because they sent so much artillery ammunition to Ukraine that they're doing part of the artillery training without the actual munitions. And in UK, it's apparently the cupboard is actually literally like critically dry.
Yeah.
That they really see. And when I hear that, it makes me think they must have really believed it. If you really did that, if you really went all in like that, you must have been on board with it. And what did the Biden administration do? The Biden administration tried to go out and be like, hey man, we're doing this thing, right? Because it didn't have to go this way, right? We know it didn't have to go this way. Jens Stoltenberg came out and he said that, hey, all we had to do was say no Ukraine, no NATO in Ukraine, no Ukraine and NATO, and the Russians wouldn't have invaded. That's all that Putin wanted, right? And guess what? We still did, and we were like, no. And now it's being said out in the open, like, hey guys, come on, there's going to be no. Okay, well, if you said that before, the war would have ended, right? But they wanted the war. And the Biden administration sold them on this, and they dragged the Europeans with them. They dragged them into this knockdown, drag-out fight, and they undermined Germany's energy security, right? They undermined, they even, remember, besides Nord Stream, there were generals being fired in the Bundeswehr and stuff like that that were not sufficiently Russophobic. So there was they were preparing the Germans to go into this thing, right? They got the Greens in power, and apparently the Greens really are not a peace party. They are the warmongering party, right? But I mean, the crucial thing is that I think it was with our support that the Europeans went down this path, and now the Trump administration is saying, "Hey, this is what people like you and I have been saying would happen all along, right? You are what you say, what your record says you are. This is what we do. We will, when it's going to be no longer beneficial to us and we finally realize, oh, this is a dumb idea, right? We're going to do the same thing that we've always done. We're going to say, peace out, suckers, And now we're doing it.
Yeah, and I think that for the Europeans, for them, it's a shock because they're the ones who are being, let out to dry, right? And with NATO, you have this kind of feeling of invincibility, right? Because all these people have ever heard from the time they're little kids is how powerful NATO is. It's the greatest fighting force in the world, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's all, propaganda. It's all indoctrination.
But people
It's
have
all,
swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker.
sure, like somebody like Keir Starmer, I'm sure he still believes that the British fighting force is the greatest force in the world and all this, like, because he's that stupid. He really is. So, if they all bought into the propaganda from the time they were born, and now, and frankly, NATO has had a pretty good string of winning a lot. Now you can
and expanding
and
successfully.
expanding, yeah. And you can argue the quality of the opponents that they've defeated or whatever, or how successful those missions were,
or how moral.
Afghanistan, but
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I don't think any of these people, it never would have entered their brain that a defeat like this could have ever happened. So for them, they were on board, and we talked about this before. The plan was always to economically crush Russia. It was never the plan to militarily crush Russia. It was always the economic plan. And when that failed,
they must have thought they could. They must have thought that they could have. They must have believed it.
Because they listened to the Americans who told them, yeah, we got your back. We got your back. We got your back. So, of course, they said, oh, okay, well, all we know is that the Americans have got this big, powerful fighting force because that's all they've ever been told. And they went along with it hook, line, and sinker. And now they're being hung out to dry and they don't like it. That's what this all comes down to. And it's unfortunate. Like, it's unfortunate that the French now feel like the Afghanis felt, I don't know, France. Go give the folks in Afghanistan a call. Ask them if they have any tips for you. I don't know what else to tell you. This shouldn't come as a shock.
I mean, and that's the thing. This shouldn't come as a shock, but they obviously are shocked. They're dazed, and that's why this is nothing less than scrambling. But I think that in this scramble, in this tussle, right? I think what they're going to try to do is secure as much of Ukraine's stuff, of Ukraine's riches that are left. I mean, I don't know how that's going to work out. And I think that's something they're trying to figure out probably as we speak, or maybe a couple hours ago, whatever. They're trying to figure this out. But what they want to do now is they want to be like, hey, this is our chance, like, especially the UK, right? I'm looking at the UK, like, this is our chance to regain some international stature. They have this chip on their shoulder. They're like pathologically, chronically obsessed with, the UK, once great empire, right? All this stuff. I'm convinced that that's the majority of the way that the British oftentimes have like this stringent, virulent Russophobia. I think it's deeply intertwined with that kind of complex of like, we lost our empire, and part of the reason why is like the Russians. So I think the UK sees this as and plus the UK is going to be so screwed. Like, what are they going to do? What's London going to do? In this new multipolar world, they need to back up all of those, all of that financial nonsense with at least some real, it's something that comes out of the ground, let's say, right? I don't care if it's rare earth minerals or whatever, but something that's actually tangible, because the world is a changing. This is a historic peace conference or security conference, but I guess peace conference, right? In a way, probably more of a peace conference than yeah. I mean, more of a peace conference than what's going on in Paris, right? So this is a shift. So the Europeans are trying to find a way to, number one, remain relevant, and then number two,
yeah, I agree.
Kind of like Vance said. Go ahead.
Well, it's death by 1,000 cuts, right? Like, you look at France is a good example. They're getting kicked out of everywhere in Europe. They're losing access. Or sorry, Africa. Sorry, I meant Africa. They're getting kicked out of everywhere in Africa. All those one-sided, cheap resource deals are ending.
Yeah. All that uranium.
all that uranium, all that everything they're going to lose. Now they look at Europe. They're losing Europe. Like they don't have like the EU is collapsing, man. Like this is going to lead to the end of the EU. You realize that, right? Like not gonna be talking about the EU in a couple of years. I don't think. I think it's
I
all
don't
going to
know.
collapse.
Zelensky says he wants to be part of the EU right now. And he wants to be part of the EU, and he wants security guarantees. And you know, it's funny because you know what he said? He said Israel-style security guarantees. And he was like, I don't know how it works, but when Israel gets attacked, you know, the Americans, the UAE, Egypt, France, everybody goes and they freaking scramble to protect them. They shoot down the missile. I want those kinds of security guarantees. Well, guess what, Zelensky? That's not going to happen because the Israelis are up against the Palestinians, right? In the worst case is Iran, and we handle Iran in a different way. The Ukrainians are up against the Russians, who are winning a war against NATO combined, right? Against the best proxy army that NATO has ever had. And you think that these armies that are in the EU would have ever suffered these kinds of massive combat casualties? I don't think they would have fought as hard as the Ukrainians. I don't think they would have had the same kind of results that the Ukrainians had. I mean, people like to say that the Ukrainians, you know, they're like, what, are their fourth or fifth army or whatever it is. And maybe Zelensky hopes that the sixth army, I guess, of Ukraine will be a European one. But it's number one. That's not going to happen. Number two, if that weren't going to happen, I don't know. I'd take a conscripted army of 60-year-old Ukrainians over, you know, contingent of German troops at this point in time.
Sure.
Because those guys have been fighting.
Yeah, and they've got something to fight for, assuming that those 60-year-olds actually want to fight for Ukraine. I have my doubts.
Yeah.
Like anybody who was gung-ho Ukrainian, they're already dead at this point, you know? So
yeah.
I think that, you know, this is all going to wrap up pretty quickly, I would imagine. The only thing that I'm not 100% about is whether or not Putin wants to take Odessa. And if they do, then the war will continue on until they take it. But I'm not clear if Russia is willing to negotiate that port. And if they are, then the war will end quickly. If it's not, they'll keep doing what they're doing until they take it, which is what they should do.
You think they shouldn't leave it up to? See, here's the thing.
Oh, totally. I would not give Ukraine or these crazy Euros any more of the Black Sea than they deserve. So no, I'd take Odessa. I'd take the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, see, like, remember, was it 2 years ago when Putin was asked, "Hey, I want to visit Odessa. Should I have a Russian or a European, should I be buying a ticket to Russia or Ukraine or whatever, something like that, or should I get a Russian visa?" I don't remember what it was. And he was like, Odessa can be an apple of harmony or an apple of discord, something like this.
Yeah. He's always seemed, willing to talk about it, which kind of makes me wonder,
See, what I think the Russians are going to do is they're going to do it. They always do this. They always lose in these negotiations. I think it was Scott Ritter I was listening to yesterday ranting about this, and he was like, here's what the Russians are going to do. They're going to they're going to accept a terrible deal, like they always do. They're going to get Asimov is going to come to Putin right now, and he's going to be telling him, "Hey, Putin, we have the Adeshnik. We have the Adeshnik right now. Don't give it up. Don't give up our advantage. Like right now, we have them over a barrel. What are they going to do, right?" And the Russians are probably going to make a really fair deal that we or the Europeans or definitely the Ukrainians don't deserve. And then, the only question is how much room is there to wiggle and like screw them over, because we've always done this. Like we've demonstrated multiple times that even treaties that we've actually signed, we can just be like, yeah, unilaterally, we're done with that. Never mind handshake agreements or things like of that nature, right? So what do they have to? They can't trust us, but I think they have to come to peace. They have to get some kind of international deal in order to to end this. And I think the Trump administration does want to end it. It maybe saying they want to end it is a little bit strong. I think maybe they want to end America's involvement in it and recoup the losses. Like I was saying earlier, whatever we've already invested, we're going to recoup our losses. Peace out to you suckers, right? And Zelensky's like, no. This is my bargaining chip that I have right now. I'm going to, like, what do I have? I have Ukrainian youth that I can still throw at the front line, right? And I have resources that as long as I still have something to bargain with, then we can at least, I can at least shore myself up in some way.
Yeah, but
like,
I don't see any of that happening now. Like nobody's going to get recruited now, right? You kidding me? If some recruiter tried to snatch you off the street right now, you would fight them to the death because you're going to die because you've got nothing. You don't even have bullets anymore,
mm-hmm.
So no, I think this whole thing is done. I really do. And I go back to it's more than just the military, it's the bureaucracy. If people are hungry and they don't know how they're going to pay their rent, all that stuff, whole thing is going to collapse very quickly.
I mean, yeah, in a way, like Vance was definitely right when he was saying that Europe has given up on those quote unquote Western values because people don't feel free. And we know with like the arrests coming after people are expressing their opinions about this whole thing, don't feel free to openly side against, let's say, the official state policy on a lot of this stuff. And even the politicians too, to a certain extent. Some of them are swamp creatures and they'll do what they have to get along to, go along to get along and all this stuff. But over the Ukraine war, like the big guys, the real oligarchs, the real the true constituency, I don't know, of the European Union, right? Overinvested massively, and they don't want to just end it like that. And with giving the Americans that deal, and that's what I mean by Zelensky's doing the multipolar game. He's playing the Americans off against the Europeans just to see what he can get. One of his quotes over the mineral deal was like, the question is not what Ukraine can give, but what can Ukraine get? So he's being really open about this, right? Where he's like, okay, I don't care about what you've already invested, suckers, right? Mm-hmm. I care about what I can get. When he says Ukraine can get, that's what he means.
I don't even think Zelensky's own children would trust him at this point because he's got no power, he's got no leverage. So nobody's going to listen to a thing that Zelensky says they're not going to take anything he's got with a grain of salt.
He's cornered though.
He's so irrelevant right now. It's unbelievable. So like I said, he's got to find a way out of Ukraine because like I said, I see this thing just collapsing really quickly. Largely because the government, like, you saw that, do you want me to show it of the woman?
I guess let's do it. It's pretty brutal. I don't know if we should show that on YouTube, but I guess whatever. It's not like we're monetized. Who cares? Yeah, dude, that was a brutal video. I saw it earlier this week. I've seen several videos of them going against these Tetsaka guys, these mobilization kind of army, but nothing like this.
Well, while I'm looking for it, because I can't seem to find it, but no, I think that like I said, once the bureaucracy collapses, you're going to see a huge refugee problem, and that'll be Europe's focus. I think. I really see it going that way.
Huge energy. Yeah, I mean.
Well, yeah. It's the funding that's the problem. Like I said, the government can keep going with the funding that they were getting, but if there's no new funding coming, and they've basically been, squeezed the last several months anyway. Now there's nothing new coming in. So in a situation like that, why would you stay there? Of course they're going to go off to Poland or wherever. And then, what does the EU do then? That's going to be their big problem in the coming couple months, I think. Not the war. I think the war is done now. It'll get sorted, because I kind of think that this whole negotiation that the Americans and the Russians as well as the Chinese are going to have, it's going to be around bigger things than just Ukraine, right? It's going to be around geopolitical spheres of influence and things like
Yeah.
that. So
that's because Ukraine is bigger than just about Ukraine.
Right. But I think at some point soon, like Trump has already said, he wants to meet with Xi and Putin to talk about security agreements and reducing the military spending, right, by 50%.
Which is nuts. That's another. Oh my gosh, dude! There's so much news.
Totally nuts. But it's nuts in the sense that I think it's a great thing. I think that the likelihood is probably slim. But
even saying that is nuts.
The fact that even saying it is great, right? I think it's
exactly
great because
just even implying this is huge.
Yeah, you've got at least somebody who's talking about it, which I think is a good thing. So if they can come to some sort of, multipolar sphere of influence understanding, maybe that'll be a good thing.
I like this.
It'll be a good thing for China and Russia. Won't be a good thing for us because the U.S. sphere of influence will be the current West, and we're on the decline. But hey, there's something, I guess.
Just to kind of underline that how much of an unexpected this all is. And dude, this is the thing about the Trump administration this time around. They are moving fast. I think they couldn't have gotten away with a lot of this stuff if they weren't moving this quickly. U.S. aid, massive. That was never on my bingo card that in a million billion years somebody would defund or fire 90% of U.S. aid employees. I would have never in a million billion years ever predicted that. Next, National Endowment for Democracy, right? But that surprises are not just there. It's a huge jolt for Europe and Munich. Right. So jolt, and the language that they use is like scrambling. Let's see. Emergency meeting, right? So next you go to like CNN, same thing. Barred from U.S.-Russia talks on Ukraine. Europe scrambles for response with Paris summit. So this is really just kind of underlining, like, they are in panic mode. And one thing that I heard, what's his name? Alexander Mercouris from the Duran. One time I heard him say that what happens in big organizations like this when there's like this kind of panic is that you get oftentimes from a scrambling panic mode to a elation. We figure it out. Everything's going to be fine overall. After all, then we go back into like some kind of panic scrambling mode. So I'm kind of keeping my eye out on this because let's say, for example, they do come up with some ideas about how they're going to divvy up these mineral resources, right? Well, the Russians haven't stopped, right? They're just going to continue to grind down. And whenever they make a deal with the Americans, and they're making that deal, we already know with the Europeans not at the table, which is crazy. The Europeans are obviously an impotent to peace. They're one of the reasons why, I guess, from the perspective of the Trump administration, why the war has to go, it's still going on, right? Which is the reason why they can't sit at the table. And the Russians are saying stuff like that too. Like, I don't know where, but they're basically saying stuff like that as well. Oh yeah, this is where I heard that. Israel style guarantees, dude. What a nut job.
It just strikes me that the folks in Europe, like the leadership, the Brussels elites, they're all just going through the classic stages of grief, and it's hilarious to watch because it was like, as soon as Vance said it, was like, no, denial. We didn't hear it. We just heard it, but la 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 la. They were like a jilted girlfriend who just got dumped but didn't want to be dumped. And now you're seeing them go through it all. Denial, anger, depression,
bargaining.
Yeah, bargain. They're eventually going to get to acceptance, right? And I think the acceptance will be okay. We need to figure out this massive refugee crisis that's about to slap us upside the head.
Yeah, like this is key right here, and this is from RT, so we know like this is what the Russians are saying, right? The Trump administration has signaled no intention of involving either NATO or the U.S. in any future security arrangements in Ukraine following a potential ceasefire with Russia, which is what the Europeans are discussing right now, right? They're discussing this potential on the ground contingent. But here's the thing. The Russians are part of NATO. They're part of the security, what is it? Security Council.
OSCE.
Basically, they're a permanent member of NATO, and they can veto any security, let's say, for example, NATO contingent on the ground. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like a NATO peacekeeping force on the ground. They're in a position to veto that. And we know that they are not okay with that. They've never been okay with this idea going as far back as the Ukrainians, bombing the Donbass. They've never been okay with this idea of Western peacekeepers in Ukraine on the ground. They've always been not okay with that. And even as they're talking, even as the Europeans are discussing this and the Ukrainians are discussing this, the Americans are saying, you guys do this, that's not NATO. You're not going to get these troops that if you are so crazy as to put them into there, you don't expect a NATO Article 5 guarantee just because you guys are getting bombed by the Russians now.
Right. Well, I don't think it comes down to any more difficulty than, like, Putin has always said, we want a comprehensive security framework for Europe. In other words, what Putin has always said is enough of this screwing around.
Rules-based nonsense.
Well, no, not that. Just enough of this European NATO structure, right? Because keep in mind, Putin asked to join NATO like 20 years ago. And the reason he asked, not because he wanted to be in NATO, because he wanted to either
stop the NATO problem, address the NATO issue.
The NATO problem, right? And then since they said no, what Putin has been saying ever since, including the famous Munich Security Conference where he spoke in 2007, was we need a comprehensive security framework for Europe once and for all. We never sorted this out after World War II, and we need to sort it out, right? That's what he's always said.
Yeah.
And he's never.
That's what the Russians have wanted the whole time. Go ahead.
That's all he's wanted. And he's never had a willing partner on the other side until now. Somebody who says, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's the way I read all of this, right? Is basically Trump is saying, well, of course you want a security framework. I'd want the same thing, right? So, that's what they're going to achieve, I think.
He even said the magic words. He said the magic words that it was over NATO expansion, right?
Sure. And the Europeans obviously don't like that because, it's their grift money is being messed with, and they like their grift money.
It's more than that. Yeah, the grift money. It's them. Like it's all that they are. Like the European elites, right? Being called out to their faces, like you unelected bureaucrats. You are the problem. Like, no wonder they were grim-faced like that. And look at this. So this is the BBC. So this doesn't get any more British propaganda. Yeah. It doesn't get any more exactly. Yeah, you read this. It's just like reading Pravda, right? Okay, this is reading the British version of Pravda. Is reading BBC nowadays. That's what it is. I know they built a reputation on whatever, but I don't know if that reputation was earned or not because I'm not 50 years old. But in my time, that reputation is not earned. Okay. End of an era. NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, formed in 1949 with the aim of blocking expansion into Europe by the Soviet Union. 32 members that agree that if one of them is attacked, the others should help defend it. After this week, post-World War II security architecture for Europe is no more. America is still in NATO, but Europe can no longer automatically rely on the U.S. to come to its aid. It's not that the U.S. necessarily spelled that out like that. This is the conclusion they are coming away with, right?
Which is hilarious to me because, that tells you everything right there. And they're still in denial. They're still kind of like, well, they're still here. No, they're done. They're finished. Like, yeah, they couldn't be any more clear. Yet these stupid Europeans still don't get it.
Yeah, man. NATO is a. I mean, even if the EU continues to trudge along for a while, I think that you are right. This is maybe not even the first death knell, of NATO, but it might be if not one of the final nails in the coffin. Because this is big, right? This is a huge discord. The Europeans were willing to go along with the Americans for decades, right? For decades. They were willing to go along with the Americans on Ukraine policy. The Germans were willing to have their energy infrastructure sabotaged, their economy sabotaged. They were going along with us in this direction. But in a shift of directions, okay, I guess people are invested in it, especially these elites, right? Their reputations, their careers and stuff like that. But I think just in general, they really are not okay with this shift in direction. They're like, no, screw Russia. They still have that thing going on,
Well, because they have so much invested into it. Because, like, the reality is, I said this earlier, I think the EU is done because of this. And they don't know what to do with that. Because keep in mind, a lot of them, their entire lives have been within the EU. They don't know what it looks like without it, right? But no, I think the EU is finished. It's going to take years to unwind and stuff. It's not going to be a quick process, but this is the impetus for the EU to be finished. And NATO, I mean, that's.
I think this is exactly like I was saying. This is like a death knell. Just to underline that, in Brussels, Pete Hegseth called on NATO's European members to spend much more on defense, saying they would have to provide the, quote, overwhelming share of military funding for Ukraine. No, not you guys are going to have to spend a lot more on your own defense here at home, but also Ukraine, you want to keep Ukraine going, you are going to have to provide the overwhelming share of the military funding.
There's a saying in retail: you broke it, you bought it.
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
Europe broke it. So,
but here's the thing, dude. Europe broke it. I don't know, dude. We had a hand in that. That's what I mean. They went along with our thing.
Yeah, but there's a difference. There's a difference. America is the store owner, right? The Europeans don't own the store.
The Americans are the employers. They own you already.
There you go.
You break it, you buy it. You break it, you broke my thing. That you have to. That comes out of your paycheck. So of course, underlining. I guess we're kind of.
I'm sounding like a real arrogant American today, aren't I? Jeez.
What is this? I don't know, dude. No, I think that the Americans are on a roll right now. Maybe it's the Trump, the Trump zeitgeist or spirit that has infected a lot of Americans, because I feel like
I'm
people
just happy,
are,
man. Like anytime you can talk about
peace,
demilitarizing or ending a war, I'm all for it, because I think it's such useless human activity. It's such wasteful spending.
So wasteful. That's me too, dude. I'm right there. I'm a peacenik. I'm. It's not fashionable to be on the left these days, but I'm bleeding heart that way, dude. I'm for peace. Okay, the U.S. and Russia are going to make a deal to end the war in Ukraine, whether Europe and Ukraine like it or not. Which is, this is why they're scrambling. The talks in Saudi Arabia will end a 3-year freeze and talking to Vladimir Putin. Well, didn't Trump already talk to him over the phone? But whatever. I guess this is like official diplomats, Marco Rubio, Sergei Lavrov, like really, really big, big names meeting each other. Okay, yeah, here it talks about it. They follow a phone call between Trump and Putin on Wednesday. Marco Rubio will be joined by Mike Waltz and Security U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has repeatedly said he would not accept any deal struck without the country's input, said Kiev has not been invited to the talks. Well, yeah, because there are actually two impediments to peace at this point. It's the Europeans and the Zelensky wing of the Ukrainian government. Obviously, the Ukrainians want the war to be over. That's just apparent. They've already lost the war. Why continue to shovel lives into this meat grinder? So we know where the Ukrainian population is, and the video that we weren't able to find, and maybe it's for the best because probably would get in trouble for displaying it, shows a Ukrainian woman coming out of a store with a bag and blowing up something like 5 or 6 dudes that are the body snatchers, Zelensky's body snatchers, the mobilization army. So she freaking goes and blows herself up to take out some of these guys with her. And I think that shows a lot about the exasperation and the mindset of what the Ukrainians are actually feeling, right? The thing is that nobody cares about what the Ukrainians are actually feeling. Zelensky has not been invited to the peace talks. So, but I mean...
Well, like, look at that number 3 there with the spend more money. That's like, these guys, like I said, they're in classic denial because they're still thinking that this is about NATO spending, and they don't understand that what the Americans
this is
told
bigger
them was,
than that.
This is NATO's like, yeah, if you guys want to give us more money, great, but we're not putting any more into your crappy continent anymore. It's basically what they were told. And these dum-dums are still in denial, thinking that it's over a percentage or something. They don't get it. They don't get it at all.
Yeah, the current NATO mandated minimum is 2%, likely rise to 3%. First of all, they weren't meeting the 2%. First of all, there's just, I guess that's irrelevant. But second of all, like exactly what you were saying, dude. A fight over 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%. This is moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic.
Yeah, I've got that video now. I just don't know how to play it. I suck at streaming.
Oh, hold up. Well, I guess I'll do this. Yeah.
Oh, I got it. There we go. I just did it. There she is.
Okay.
This was on Friday. Boom.
It's crazy. So as you can see.
So that woman, apparently the story is her son was killed, conscripted. So she was taking revenge on some of these recruiters. So she blew herself up. And speaking as a parent, I'm guessing she had a big smile on her face when she did it.
Yeah, dude. It's so brutal to watch, dude. It just hurts my heart. Heart goes out to all the...
And this is what I'm saying about the refugees. You're going to have 20 million people like her.
Yeah, you're going to have 20 million unhinged people who lost everything. And it's your fault that they have to go through this. You know what it's going to be like you think at a migrant crisis with let's say a lot of people from Tunisia or whatever coming over to Canada and saying, you know what, like, yeah, I live here, but also like screw you guys. Like what's his name from Open Mic, Nika, right? He's open about that. He's like, no, I feel more loyalty towards Palestine than I do towards Canada, that place where I live. You're gonna have those guys, but they're gonna be Ukrainians, and they're obviously willing to go do suicide bombing extremes.
And the funny thing about, well, it's not that it's funny, but Zelensky's been warning about this for a couple of years now, right?
He did. You're right. He said stuff about this.
He said stuff about this repeatedly. And nobody's ever paid any attention to him when he said it. But if you listen to him, when you read between the lines of what he's saying, he's basically said, you know what? If a bunch of refugees come to Europe and they're angry because we lost the war, that's going to be a lot of problems for the people in Europe. And if you read between the lines of what he was saying exactly this. You're going to see attacks like this happen in European cities. So that woman blew herself up and a bunch of people in Ukraine. Yeah, that'll happen in Berlin. I can see that for sure.
People that lost everything.
When you start, you think about it, man, and forget about your home and all that. None of that matters. You lose a child for BlackRock? No, buddy, I'd be strapping a bomb to my back too. No question about it. No question.
A parent. I mean, if you don't, if you've never seen what it's like, so when a parent loses a child, it is a whole different level of not okay, right? There's like, it's like one of those things that shouldn't happen, that kids shouldn't be dying before their parents. And that really is something that can drive people crazy, drive them to crazy extremes. Just take a look at the Middle East, you know, people don't forget that drives people to crazy ends, right? So spend more now.
And you know,
good job.
I have no doubt that there's all sorts of hatred in Ukraine for Russians right now. I have no doubt about that. Of course there is. But I'll bet you there's a whole lot of hatred for the Europeans and the Americans too.
Oh, and if you think it's bad now, wait, it'll get worse. And guess what? It'll go both ways, because the Europeans, who don't even understand what is going on in the first place, we're just as dumb. They're just as dumb as us, right? Obviously, they're going to be like, screw these guys. And that's happening in Poland right now, where Polish people are saying, you know, screw Ukrainians. Get out of here. Go to your country. What are you doing? Ruining my country, turning my beautiful Poland into Ukraine. So I don't think that's going to be, I don't think those are going to be unusual circumstances, right? I think that people are going to be getting into that FU mode, and there's been a lot of instances where, you know, and even in Denmark and stuff, the Ukrainians have been, I don't want to use the word entitled, but maybe acting a little bit entitled, like, oh, here I am in this now shithole country, you know, it's not as good as I thought it would be, and
the whole thing's a mess. Like, what do you have coming from Ukraine that's going to be good? You're going to have a bunch of people who are crippled from the war physically
and mentally damaged people,
and mentally with PTSD. Mm-hmm. You're going to have tons of that. You're also going to have a bunch of people who are mentally damaged because they lost people. So you got the soldiers
and people that have a chip on their shoulder against you because you did this to them.
Totally. Oh man, it's just going to be a mess there. So like I said, I think that this is going to wrap up real quick, because they're just going to, like, the real problem for 2025 in Ukraine is going to be, how do we keep all these people in Ukraine? I think that's going to be the thing. I really do.
All hands on deck. Everybody forget what we every single conference that we just had. New emergency conference. What do we do to keep them in there?
Yeah.
Build a Trump-style wall around Ukraine.
I don't know. Wall around Ukraine.
I don't know. Here's what's going to happen. I think what we're looking at is the potential partition of Ukraine. The thing that people have been talking about, maybe the worst case scenario, where the Russians say, "Hey, listen,
by the way,
you're on board with this." Okay, so we're on the same wavelength there. I think the Russians are going to be like, "Hey, Poland, Romania, right? Hungary, what's up? You know, what about these historic injustices where the Soviets, where Stalin gave your lands and your people over to these unstable nutcases who have been shoving them into a meat grinder, right?" And I think that they're going to be on board with it. And I don't think the Russians are going to be against it either. They're just going to take what's theirs.
Well, here's the most important thing. Europe's going to be on board with it, because they need they need that now, right? They need somebody to take these people over. They need somebody to take over the land and somebody to take over the people. So they're all going to be on board with. They're going to be like, okay, Poland, this is now yours. Hungary, Romania, Moldova, yeah, you can go, because you look like you're the next problem. You can go over to Romania right now. Just preempt it. Like, no, man, that's all going to happen for sure. I agree with you. And Putin's alluded to that so many times as well. Like, he's always said, "Hey, you guys, this is not our problem, but it'll probably be yours."
Remember how it started in the pre-war speech, Putin's two were going in speeches, and people like to say a lot of crap about him going like, "Listen, Ukraine is like a relatively recent artificial construct on the face of the European continent in the first place, like, just realistically speaking." And people were like, "Whoa!" Everybody got their hair on fire over that. But now it's like more and more people are kind of seeing it that way, and that's going to be. I mean, you're going to have to make some excuses, right? It's not like these elites are just going to be like, "Yeah, guys, we are complete failures and we don't know what we're doing. You're right about us," right? They're going to do that.
Well, Putin said this many times. I've heard him say it, and I think he may have said it on Tucker Carlson too as well. But he said something along the lines of, "Listen, we're gonna," and if you read between the lines, this is what he said: "We're gonna take what we're gonna take, that Western rump that's left,
None of our business. We don't care.
that's none of our business. But it'll probably be something that the Poles, the Huns, and the Romanians will figure out. Is basically what he said. And
I got to rewatch that. It's been a while.
Yeah, if you read between the lines, basically he was saying, we don't want this. We know what governing these crazy people is like. We don't want to go there again because we tried that with the Soviet Union and it was a big pain in our ass. We get it. So it's going to be a problem. It's just not our problem.
I don't remember who said it, but I don't remember who made this point. It was some Western analyst, but said that, listen, if 70 years in the Soviet Union didn't get rid of that drive towards nationalism and fascism that has existed in Western Ukraine, I mean, yeah, to be fair, we fostered it, we funded them, and try to save a lot of the people from there. But if 70 years under the Soviet Union didn't do anything, it's probably not going to just disappear overnight. And the Russians don't want to deal with those crazies. Those crazy people, they are unbalanced, unstable, and I mean, it's tough because as a Russian American, I have a lot of Ukrainian family, that I know, right? And so for me, I don't feel that kind of, screw you guys, we're no longer and screw all of our shared history throughout all of the centuries and stuff like that. I personally, I'm not feeling that. But what I've heard people say is that yeah, you know what, screw you guys, we are no longer brotherly people. We're going to take what's ours. We're going to save our boys in there. We're going to take care of our people, which in that case, if you're taking that attitude, then you almost have to do something about Odessa. You can't just leave Odessa there to be slowly turned into, the next Crimea in reverse.
I agree. And that's why I say I think it'd be a horrible mistake for the Russians to be flexible on it. But I kind of have it in my gut that Putin's willing to trade on it. So
yeah, we'll see. There's a lot of I think there's more than one way they could go on that. And I've said this many times, right? Where you can have some kind of 100-year lease deal that we revisit in 100 years, kind of like what they were doing in Crimea, and that's kind of a Trojan horse in a way, because then you have thousands of Russian troops in Odessa, so you can make sure that, hey, you're not building American, ports that accept American military hardware and stuff like that. The Russians are right there, and that's kind of why Crimea ended up being so bloodless and such a surprise, is because the Russians didn't have to invade Crimea. They were already there.
Right.
They just had all they did was just, the ones with the Ukrainian patches, just swapped them out for Russian patches, and other than that, the Russians had a bunch of soldiers already on the ground. So I could see something like that with Odessa, where the Russians can, because you're gonna have to leave some stuff on the table. You're gonna have to. The West has to save face. Donald Trump has to save face. To some extent, that's something that always has to be countered into these kinds of deals and agreements.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll see. I think it'll really come down to what the ask is, right? I don't think at this point the Russians are willing to give up anything that they're not really willing to give up. In other words, they're going to dictate their terms and they're going to get their terms. Now the language around it or saving face and stuff, yourself, that's not a Russian thing. They don't feel the need to save face as long as they get what they're going to get. So
but we do. We need to save face.
No, I get it. But the Russians don't. And I guess my point is, the Russians are not going to give up something they don't want to give up just to placate the Americans' fragile ego. That's not going to happen. So, but if it's something trivial, yeah, they might. But I just don't know what that trivial will be. And that's why
I think Trump can say, Trump can pull a thing with Syria. We got the oil, right? You could just do that with Ukraine and say, we got the, I don't know, graphite. I don't know what kind of what they have in Western Ukraine that the Americans can get their hands on, and say, we got the chromium or lithium. I don't know. Can't say, right? But we got it.
I kind of
we got the thing. I'm a businessman. I got a good business deal. The other guys, they were ripping us off. Here I came in and I saved this bad deal and I made a good deal. And I think Zelensky knows that. That's why he's playing. I mean, how much can Europeans do if the Americans say, no, screw you guys. This is gonna come to an end. I think not much. And we can see that already. That's the reason why they're not at the table, because they're not playing a huge role already.
Here's my guess. I think Trump knows exactly what Putin wants because Putin told him. And
it's a good point. They talked. Yeah, so they probably know where the Russians are flexible.
Exactly. And if you notice, Trump's language around Ukraine is much different after he talked to Putin than it was before. Right? So before he talked to Putin, he was talking about, sanctions and blah, 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 blah. After he talked to Putin, well, all of a sudden, friggin' NATO's gone and all this other stuff. So I have to believe that Putin has kind of set out, this is what we want, and this is the only thing we're going to accept. And you need to work around this. So we'll help you work around this. But at the end of the day, this is what's going to happen. Now, Trump, his language changed after that, right? Because he started talking about, if you remember, this is Biden's war. He keeps reminding everybody, this is not his war, this is Biden's war. So perhaps his way of saving face is just coming out and saying, hey, this was never my war. I never would have gotten any of you people in this war had I been president.
Yeah.
Thank God you have me, Donald J. Trump, as your
president. Put an end to this mess and nonsense.
Put this into it. I think that's what it will be.
Yeah, and he can do that, and he doesn't have to care that much, and he can personally just take it. Honestly, in a way, that's a good point. Like, Donald Trump is the personality figure that can take and shoulder the brunt of the fallout of that and still survive politically.
Honestly, Bradley, I think this whole discussion in Riyadh and with China and whatever, that's the real conversation. Ukraine's done. It's finished, dusted. The real conversations, I think, are going to be around that spheres of influence and who gets what. Who gets frig. I'm so brain dead right now. I cannot remember the name of that country right next door to Venezuela with all the oil. What's the name of the country? The country right next door to Venezuela with the big that's in dispute between the two countries, that region, and there's all sorts of oil there.
Ecuador, Chile, I don't know.
Oh, the other way. Anyway, it's not like I have a map right here. Anyway, that country, which I'll tell you right now, because I'm so stupid. I can't
Honduras?
No. Guyana.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Guyana.
Okay.
So, there's a boatload of... I think these will be the discussions, right? What is our understanding for, that oil?
How are we going to divvy up this thing? How are we going to... the mechanics of the post-Ukraine settlement? I think I agree with you. This is what I think, that they are also trying to figure this out.
Yeah. So they're all going to go off and do that. And the bit players, what are they called? NPCs? The NPCs like the UK and France and the rest of them, they'll all be told what the deal is later on.
Yeah. And this right here, this is called bargaining. This whole thing where they're saying Kyiv will never accept a deal done behind its back, rejected U.S. proposal for access, too focused on U.S. interests, offered no special security guarantees in return. This is the bargaining stage, to your point earlier, where people are going to go through this cycles of loss, and this is a major loss. And Donald Trump really is the guy in the position to say the Biden Democrats, crazy Biden, whatever. In fact, I kind of don't even see him talking that much about Biden these days. I feel like Biden and Trump.
But he does about this. You notice that he does about this one.
Okay.
So, this is the only time you'll hear him talk about Biden lately. You're right.
Biden's
he makes a point of it every time.
Yeah. It's this is not my idea. This was a dumb idea, and he's gotten that message across. And I guess, okay, according to the BBC, probably, okay, JD Vance's speech, we touched upon this, insulting, ill-judged, hoped that he would reassure them the U.S. was not abandoning Ukraine. Psych. You are what your record says, bitches. The address was met with silence, denounced by several politicians. Okay, disunity and discord. While the Munich Security Conference was occupied by the geopolitical, Donald Trump announced plans to bring in a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports from March. So it's another big deal. We're doing the thing. And I think the steel imports in aluminum, these tariffs are going to be massive. I think if it goes, I mean, unless there is a lot of backdoor deals and loopholes and stuff like that, this is going to have massive reverberations. It was evidence that there are now very obvious rifts between Washington's positions and Europe's on several issues, from trade to dealing with Russia. Divide that UK is struggling to bridge, with Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer telling reporters both relationships were important. Britain was not choosing between the US and EU. Yeah, I mean, we all see where this is going, and it's going.
Starmer doesn't get it though. Like,
you don't matter.
You don't matter. Like, nobody's asking you to bridge anything here. Just fuck off. Like, fuck off and die. Like, that's what you're being told.
Yeah, we don't care. Even the Brits don't care about you, dude. Like, they're sick of you. Everybody's sick of you, and everybody's sick of these European elites, and that they know this, and this is why. Well, I guess JD Vance's speech, which is their fourth point, is saying you guys are the enemy from within. You guys are the screw ups. Actually, maybe this is another kind of thought that I had regarding this. This is another one of those attempts of doing the assault, like the massive, like, bam in your face, you know, while stuff is going on in the background, to get everybody kind of off kilter, go like, whoa, what is this? You know, he literally just showed a great big middle finger to the audience here, you know, saying, screw you guys, you are the problem. So it's almost like a little bit of like a dazzle them over here while we are getting the mechanics of stuff figured out over here, you know, kind of thing. You know, a little bit like that. I don't know, did you get that sense?
No, I think he was just being straight up blunt about what the plan is. You know, the Americans don't need to play games, right? Like, they're the hegemon, right? So the rest of us have to go around walking on eggshells and playing this, you know, diplomatic game. Americans don't need to, and never have, right? Yeah. So why start now? I think Vance was just straight up telling people what's going to happen. Right? I wouldn't overthink it any more than that. Like, you know,
well, it was a big
it's just the BBC and these European, like, again, they're all in denial. They're all trying to, you know, kind of overthink what it all means. And sometimes the answer is just the answer. And I think that's the answer. So for Europe, it's really, what do we do now? And I think maybe the answer is, okay, cool. Yeah, maybe we need some sort of military. I doubt that'll happen. Like I said, my bet is longer term, the EU is just going to go kaput. And then you're just going to have a bunch of nation states like we used to have. And they will determine what their military needs are based on their threats.
Yeah, and I get that sense from Trump that he's trying to deal with the specific leaders of the European countries.
Oh, like he's already said he's not dealing with the EU.
He's already.
Yeah,
I did not see that.
I'm not dealing with world leaders. I'm not dealing with this.
Really? Wow. He just balls to the wall just saying it. You know, it kind of reminded me of when what was it? Old Ursula von der Leyen, when she went to China to discuss something with China, and the Chinese sent her back on economy flight. She didn't even get the diplomat. It's like, who are you? You're like an unelected nobody representing nothing. Go away. Why do you matter? So I mean, it kind of gives me a little bit of those vibes. And I think somebody like Trump looks at those kinds of moves and goes like, yeah, these are the big players. These are the important guys, and I'm I'm with these guys, I'm not with you losers. It's crazy that he even said this. I'm dealing with world leaders, actual leaders in the world, not
Well,
you guys.
I've also got to
I gotta
believe.
find this.
Yeah, I've
Go
also
ahead.
got to believe that Trump, like he's been in power now for a month or whatever it's been, and obviously he's coming in, he's asking questions, and clearly he knows now a lot more than he did a month ago.
Obviously, just by his
So
rhetoric, you can tell.
yeah, and so any president worth their salt is going to say to themselves, well, before I get on, international TV and start, running my dick liquor about things and cashing, making checks I can't cash or whatever the saying is, maybe I should find out, like, what's the state of our actual military? Let's start there. What's the state of our actual finances? What's the state of,
The Russians'
inflation?
actual finances and actual
Like
military.
all this basic stuff that we've all been lied to, and Trump has no doubt been lied to as well. He's coming in now and he's getting a full assessment of America's health. And forget about Ukraine. Like, this is so off his radar because America's health is like financial health. That's the most important thing right now. Everything else is peripheral to it. So he's coming in and he realizes that, oh my God, we are on the verge of bankruptcy. We need to do something drastic. He's come up with this tariff plan. Will it work? Probably not. But
But meanwhile, that's not his only drastic. That's not his only drastic.
And also the cuts.
He's making drastic moves all over the place, everywhere. These are hard hitting. Well, I mean, USA, that's drastic. That's massive. That's the Munich Security Conference performance. That right there, that was a big FU. That was massive too. So I think he's making really big moves on several fronts, and you can see that already. Some dividends have been paid. Like it really is. That I don't remember, some of the journalists came up with this term, like the chaos bomb, right? The Trump chaos bomb, or the Molotov cocktail that the populists thought that they threw into the White House in the first Trump administration. This time around, it's kind of, whoa, we're seeing some sparks, we're seeing some flames, I know the last time that we talked, you were like, I'm not seeing anything that's really making. I don't see any concrete steps that show that this is really a change in pace, but I don't know, man. This is a change in pace somewhere.
Well, he's like I said, he's been mentioning the U.S. debt quite a bit, if you notice.
Okay, good point. Yeah, another one.
So clearly, somebody's been educating him about the debt and what that means. Yeah. And they've also been educating him about de-dollarization and what that means. Yeah. So like I said, I think Trump now knows that America's probably in a lot worse shape than he thought. And that's why I go back to his focus is going to be that and that alone. All this other stuff is just going to be peripheral, I think. And and that's why Ukraine is just so off his radar. It's so off his radar at this point.
Well, maybe not off his radar. Maybe he wants to put it past. He wants to get it off his plate. This is something that he's like, I'm done with this. I'm moving on. I got bigger fish to fry. I think he really does. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't remember who said this. Go ahead.
That's also why, by the way, we're not going to see a conflict in China at all. And I've always said that, but now I'm convinced of it because I think Trump is awakening to the fact that the U.S. doesn't have the power it once had. And the most pragmatic thing right now for everybody in the world, particularly the Americans, is how do we kind of repivot the country, our economy, all that stuff. How do we repivot to this new changing world that's changing rapidly, and we no longer have control over that change?
Yeah. So we're doubling down.
Well, it's like how do we realign ourselves in the best way possible? Because the reality is our standards of living are going to go down, and we're all going to take a hit. So how do we mitigate that hit?
I don't know. I think that it's up for debate whether or not, quote unquote, it's the right move. but I think it's a smarter direction for sure. It's a direction that makes more sense. I would, if we're going to be doubling down.
I don't know how. What would a better move be? Go to war with everybody and die? That doesn't sound like a good plan.
Well, like what he's doing. Well, I mean, he's doubling down on the genocide in Palestine. So obviously, as a liberal, I'm not really.
Nobody cares about that though.
But if we're talking about real politique, right? Where in the real world that doesn't actually. I think that's just suckers like me think that matters, but in real world,
right. You and I were
like, oh, save the children, right? Nobody cares about the children. Get it over.
Yeah, you're right. The cold hard reality of realpolitik is, unfortunately, you got three big players in the world, and they're going to define what happens to the rest of us.
Yeah, in the process, Palestine is getting thrown under the bus, and they're not the only ones.
Right.
But yeah. But he's doing smart moves.
Like it's terrible.
He's doubling down on influence in the Western Hemisphere, right? Like Monroe Doctrine, we're really doubling down on that. Like, I don't want China to be owning stuff here which is like, okay, in my opinion, that's a good move. I mean, I'm an American, and I like the idea of China not influencing our southern border. I mean, I guess maybe some people might have different opinions about that, but I kind of look at it as like, stay out of our backyard. And yeah, I did just say that. And if you don't agree with me, that's too bad, But at the same time, I mean, every major player is going to have a sphere of influence, and that's our sphere of influence. And if we're going to double down on our sphere of influence instead of like stalling that out so that we could focus on somebody else's sphere of influence, Trump is saying, JD Vance is saying, there's a new sheriff in town, and yeah, we're going that direction. But they're also, what else are they talking about? They're also talking about the whole Greenland thing. It's still surreal that Trump literally did actually try to buy Greenland. The jokes were only like it's like people are joking, I'm gonna buy Greenland. Remember in his first administration, like, this place would look good with a Trump Tower. People are like, haha, and then like in the second administration, buy Greenland. I guess it just shows a difference in focus, is my point. Go ahead.
Yeah, and when you think about the sphere of influence argument, like, if we go under the assumption that the three great powers are all gonna, divide up the world, well, yeah, then it starts to make sense. It's like Canada's the 51st state, Greenland, Panama, it all sorts of works out in that Western Hemisphere kind of narrative. So like you kind of see where he's going with that. And you kind of say to yourself, well, if that's where he's legitimately going with that, it's not that, insane to think, right? And by that, I mean, there's nothing preventing America from, rolling into Canada tomorrow and nobody doing it, right? So
we already got rid of Trudeau.
Yeah, and same thing with Greenland, and same thing with Panama. If you think about it in that way, and the only thing that's keeping these nation states from being invaded is some sort of
nuclear umbrella.
Well, there's not even that. There's just this altruistic
hegemon
belief within the United Nations that you don't invade other countries. But if you are willing to just say, screw it, we're going to invade this country, and that nobody's going to do anything about it because nobody will, well, that's the world we're in.
If that happens, that will be the final death knell, the final nail in the coffin, or the final death knell for NATO. That'll be, I think right now NATO is terminal. It's definitely going.
But keep in mind, if that
happens, it's going to go from terminal to.
If that happens, then that's the least of everybody's worries, because that just means that the world has been completely flipped up on side of its head, and there's basically three mafia overlords running the world, right? And every other country is somehow subjugated to it. Now, that's not that different from the current model, but you know where I'm going with that, right? But so I think
Yeah.
that it's not so like I don't think that it's that out there to think about, like when you think about where Trump was coming from, and I do believe that's where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all, if to see a tank rolling down the street one day. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
People would be cheering it on. Let's move on to our two scoops then, or
nah, nobody be cheering it on, but I think a lot of people would just be like, whatever. Like I'd personally move, but that's just me.
Interesting. I mean,
Yeah, you want to do the scoops?
Let's do the two scoops and wrap up. But yeah, so really, really apologize to our audience, or small audience, such as we have one, as far as we do, for missing we missed 2 weeks or something, maybe more. There were some extraneous circumstances.
Yeah, I get a real illness in my family. It's not looking good for my family members. So
family stuff. So
had to be down there last week, and I'm actually going down again tomorrow. So,
oh man, best of luck to you. Let's do the two scoops then. Okay. So let's see. Is this it? No, this is not.
The wrong one. No.
All right. Here we go. All right.
Where's the no hammock sign? No. I can see you. You can't see me. If you don't come out of that, I'm not here. No.
I'm not here.
Oh my god. No.
Oh my god.
You can't stop me.
Oh my god.
You can't stop me.
I said I won't stop. You see that?
Oh my god.
Yeah? I'm not gonna.
I spin around.
That looks like fun.
I won't be stopped. You can't stop me. I spin around.
Come on, just drive the bus. Everyone's got places to go.
I don't think we can. Can you get down so we can get where we're going? Please?
What?
Dude, please?
I'm staying in the hammock.
I'm not moving this bus.
You know what? There's AC in here.
Dude, get down.
I'm not getting down.
Get down.
The bus is not moving.
Get
So
down.
you-
Get down.
There's
We
AC
have to
in there.
go.
Oh, it looks like he's about to get off the hammock. All right. You finally get there's a C in here. I'm not getting down. I mean, it seems reasonable, dude. I mean, people do this. They just sleep on the bus and let the bus go in circles, right? Like used to live in California. I've seen homeless kids do this. And, if you got a nice bus driver, he won't care. But I mean, this is too much. I really wonder where this is.
I would like to see the sign that says no hammocks.
I would like to see the sign that says no hammocks. Oh, dude. It just, this guy's a freaking badass. Look at him. I don't see the sign that says no hammocks.
All jokes aside,
We've got
he's clearly mentally ill. He's probably homeless, and
I'm guessing he is.
we're seeing tons of this. We're seeing more and more every day. I see guys like this, and it's just it really, really, really has worn me down, because I don't know if I can do it anymore, to be honest with you. When you stumble out of the train station, because I go and work really early, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, at that time of morning, they haven't really cleaned out all the bums yet.
Oh,
And
you see them.
You see them everywhere. And it's just, the number one, it's getting more and more of them. And number two, it's not just people who you think, okay, well, that guy's a drug addict or whatever. Like a few days ago, I saw a woman and her toddler, and they were freezing to death, like on the street. And I almost cried, because, you just never saw that here anymore. And now you see it everywhere. So this guy is a symptom of a much bigger problem that we have in the West. And it's one that I think we're just going to see more and more of, because our living standards are going down pretty rapidly, quite frankly.
Right. You don't ride in a hammock on a bus and have this fight and experience this public humiliation if you had somewhere with AC that you could have hung up your hammock in the first place, right? This guy's just like, hey man, it's comfy in here. I get it, but it's too much. You can't. The poor bus driver. What is he gonna do about this? He's like, I'm not moving the bus till you get down. I wonder if this has worked before. I wonder if he's gotten away with this on another bus somewhere.
Well, I read a scary stat the other day. It was like homelessness increased by 18% in America in 2024. That's just incredible when you think about that.
A bit.
And, we're just going to see more and more of this because our nations in the West are extremely sick right now. We've got very, very sick people.
Of a sick society.
Very sick. And it seems like we're the only nations with these problems, like even the really poor places I've been to, like the third world countries where there's homelessness, you don't see this. They're
It's
homeless.
not this kind of
They're
homeless.
dignified. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. There's a difference in the kind of homelessness that we have here, and even countries, even poor countries, where there is also homelessness. It's not like this. And of course, the policy, our policies, and I think Canada is even worse than the U.S. Maybe not everywhere in the U.S. is the same, but I think in a lot of ways, almost everywhere in Canada is worse than how they're addressing the issue in the States. Because here it depends where you're at, but in Canada they're like, I mean, I'm seeing all of the free paraphernalia and do your drugs here kind of facilities being set up, and that's obviously going in the opposite direction. That's like trying to kill the patient, like pump him full of drugs so you don't have to hear him die. That's not solving the problem at all. And as entertaining as this is, and I thought this was pretty hilarious, you're probably right. 99.9%. This is a homeless man who's trying to find a place to sleep, a comfortable place, a safe, comfortable place to sleep. This is not it. This is not the safe, comfortable place to sleep. But you go through that long enough, and it really does screw with your head. Like you look at, I've met homeless people, right? I've met a lot of them. I've met people that have been homeless since they were like 12, that's a thing that happens. And it really takes a toll on your mental health. Not being able to go to sleep, not being able to feel safe, being harassed constantly, being felt like the shit outcasts of society. All of that really does wear these people down. And it's
well, that's my guess. You want my guess about this guy? He just wanted to be noticed because his society has neglected him and they've forgotten about him. And that's why he's homeless. And that's why he's mentally ill. And that's why he's just screaming for attention. That's what I think this dude is all about. And, I think we need to get prepared to see a lot more of this.
To see more of this. Oh man, that's the 2 skips of crazy ended up being depressing after all. Dang.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to depress you.
No, but you're right. This is important that we point this out, because where we live, if you guys don't live in the United States or Canada, you guys don't see this, but it never used to be like this. This is a homeless crisis. We've had a homeless crisis for decades. Now it's a homeless emergency. Look at this guy. This guy is trying to find a safe place to sleep, or maybe he's lashing out for some kind of attention. Thank God it's not a psychotic mass shooter or a mass stabber, right? This guy's just...
Oh, there's lots of them too.
But there's lots of that too. Exactly.
And that's why I'm saying, like, Europe, get ready for Ukraine. That's all. Get ready for Ukraine.
Oh, man.
That woman, that mother who went kablooey, there's going to be a lot of those.
Yeah, she's not the only one that feels that way.
There's going to be a lot of angry Ukrainians, and justifiably so.
Yes. I think that's a good note to end on. It's an appropriate note to end on.
We failed to Ukraine. It's what we do. We're sorry. It's what we do.
Yeah.
Sorry,
guys.
From the start. It's what we do. We
Me too.
use you, we leave. And now
you are what your record says you are. Haven't you noticed, guys? Haven't you noticed what we've been doing for the last, to Vietnam? What did you guys think was going to happen? Maybe they thought they would be Korea. I don't know what they thought, but we're sorry. But also, we're not the only ones, because you know what? You guys did have a problem.
Message to the world. If if you're dealing with a country from like the collective West, just assume that we're going to screw you over. Just assume it, because we will. Sorry.
Learn by now. Learn by now. Just learn.
Learn by now. Just learn. Learn. Just learn.
Yeah. There you go.
If you're in Africa, listen to people like Ibrahim Traore and people like that. Learn from them. Elect them. Get them in power. Whatever you need to do, do that.
Yeah, get it through. But okay, so I guess that is going to be our episode 14, or tentatively something. And thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully we'll be able to get one in next week on time. But if not, we'll see you guys on open mic and stuff. And I guess peace.
Cheers.